Teachers, what's the darkest thing you've seen from a student? Not a teacher, but I worked with students. A student was said to give oral sex in a vehicle while a screwdriver was held to her neck. When he orgasmed, she made a run for it back to her residence. She had the clarity and ingenuity to keep the semen in her mouth and spit it in a cup for evidence. There was a manhunt and the guy was caught. He was seen convicted of 3 separate student sexual assaults across the state. I was in the emergency room with the student a couple hours after the incident. Standing there as she described what happened, through her tears, and in front of her mother, was one of the hardest things I've ever had to witness. A student during holiday break a few years back murdered her mother and her mother's boyfriend brutally with the help of her own boyfriend. Then the bodies laid in the apartment as she left, and eventually went to a New Year's party days later. Eventually she was arrested along with her boyfriend. Chilling to think she was sitting in my classroom days before, probably with this whole plan in her head. I was student teaching when I was 21. I had a class of high school seniors. One boy was caught telling his friend he planned to rape me in my car. I ended up getting transferred about 2 months into my student teaching experience. I've been assaulted before, so it felt even worse. Edit. I'm really blown away by the kind replies here. Thank you all. Had a student in my class as a sophomore. Every morning her junior year she would come in and chat in the morning. One day out of the blue it stopped. In fact, she wasn't at school at all anymore. Fast forward 3 months, she shows up and looks broken. I ask her what's going on. After quite a bit of hesitation, she tells me that she went to a party and was DD. No alcohol in her system. However, she woke up the next morning and couldn't remember a thing about the previous night. A couple weeks later, she finds out she is pregnant. She was a virgin before that night. Roofied and op-ed. She had only told her counselor and now me. I haven't had a chance to talk to her due to COVID. Her outlook and demeanor was night and day before and after that party. Not my class, but I adopted a rabbit once. To keep my other rabbit company I noticed she didn't have a tail, and when I asked about it, I was told she was a kindergarten pet. Apparently the reason she was up for adoption was that one of the children cut off her tail with a pair of fucking safety scissors. She had some issues. I was working at an after-school program as a director site manager, and one of my employees radioed me needing my immediate assistance at the playground. I raced out there. The employees pulled me aside and said that I needed to look at Lil Billy's back. Since it was dark outside she couldn't tell if it was scratch marks or burns. She said she had put in timeout, standing against the basketball pole, and he was trying to lean up against it, but kept making weird spastic moves every time he leaned against it. So she asked to look at his back. After he said it hurt, I asked Lil Billy to follow me to the nurse's office. Leaving the door open, the school staff was all gone. But there are cameras everywhere, and just in case I didn't want anyone thinking I was doing something inappropriate with the kid, since I had no idea what I was about to see and or hear, it took everything in my power to not audibly gasp once I lifted the back of his shirt. I counted at least 7 belt loop bruises and 5 lash marks. I asked where he got them from, to which he replied, "My dad. I got a bad grade." This kid got beat with both ends of a belt because he got a P in conduct. I ended up asking his permission to take pictures, and I immediately called CPS. When I showed up to work the next day at 2 p.m, City and the ISD police were there. I found out from the CPS person that the woman listed as his mom was the dad's GF, and she knew the beatings were going on, and that this apparently wasn't the first time. CPS and the city police refused to let the GF or dad see him good. Mom lived in a neighboring town, so they removed him immediately and sent him there. That's the last I heard of anything. Not a teacher, but when I was in 5th grade my school had a buddy system. Since I was the oldest out of 7 kids, I grew up learning how to take care of troublesome kids. The buddy system went like this. A 5th grader would be assigned a kindergartner. The 2 classes met every Wednesday and did arts and crafts together. Since my teacher saw I was strict with kids and knew how to take care and be responsible with kids, I was put with the most problematic kid. This kid misbehaved a lot, and I got him to become a lot better and didn't think much of it until one day this happened. We were helping the kids cut things out, and they gave us big kids real scissors. I had turned around for just a little to ask my classmate what the next step was, when I felt a very sharp pain on my arm. When I turned around I saw that this little kid had cut me. Not a big cut, but still. I didn't yell, but I asked him why he did that. He then told me that that is what his mom did to him, and that it was just tougher love. It turns out that this kid had been abused and cut by his mother so much he thought that it was love. It was rough. Not from a student, but about one. Teachers at full staff meeting were warned not to call home for this family. The executive vice principals would, as the parents were liable to abuse the caller. That's odd, we all murmur to ourselves and nearby compatriots. It's not an unusual directive. We regularly have parents that are more hostile to us when we call home about lack of effort, behavior, whatever. But the thing was, this was a good kid. People we are calling home to say how awesome he did. The parents were responding aggressively, but to praise. They did not believe us. They were abusing the teaching staff for lying to the parents about this kid. They refused to believe there was an ounce of good behavior or ethic possible from this kid. They hated this child. And oddly, this was not an only child. The rest were fine. Call home all day. But we were not to call home about this one particular boy because the parents refused to be civil in discussions about him and demanded punishments for imagined crimes. Unsurprisingly, reported through the system, kid ended up in foster care, but I don't know more. Hope he's got a family that loves him more. Like I said, he was a good kid while I knew him. Had a kid at summer camp one year that kept acting up. One day he actually brought a knife to camp and was threatening some kids that were teasing him. We got the knife from him and of course got the authorities involved. His mom came in and was in tears. She says that he's really a good kid, but she just can't control his emotions and he's never been violent before this little episode. The cops had him in the camp office, and during their interrogation he got really emotional and could barely pronounce his words above all the heavy crying. He was telling us about how it feels to be made fun of and how much he hurts. Not one adult in the room could hold back their tears. It was frightening to see how badly he was hurting. Sad thing is that the bullying was never reported to anyone, and he internalized it all so well until he snapped. I was very actively involved with the kids, and although I supervised hundreds and thousands of kids counselors, I never saw one occurrence or heard about anything involving this child. He went away for a bit but ultimately returned a few weeks later. A few kids were named and also disappeared for a few weeks. When everyone returned it was like it never happened. We had all sorts of experts show up to counsel the other kids at camp, and all of the parents came in several times for workshops about domestic violence and bullying. There was most certainly a silver lining, but witnessing that kid break down was really one of the hardest things I've seen in my 36 years of life. It truly hurt my heart to see him lose it. Nobody should bully anyone for any reason.